Hey everyone, welcome to our week 3 lecture. I apologize in advance. This is going to be the longest lecture series that we have in this class. We really want to talk about the foundations of the guidance tradition so that you can understand where this has evolved from and how beliefs have changed over time. So there's going to be a number of screencast lectures for you to review in this section. Take your time, take breaks as you need, get up and walk around, whatever you need to do to take care of yourself so that you can really engage in this material that will really help propel us into the future of this class. I'm going to shift the recording now to come off of me and just show you the slides so that you don't get distracted by my wild hand movements and whatnot as we go on this lecture. So why are we talking about child development in a guidance strategies class? It's really because in order to understand the behavior of the child, we must really understand where they're coming from, meaning how they are developing. We want to know where they are right now, but also where they have been. Children do not develop in a straight line. It is not a straight point A to point B to point C. There is often regression and then jumping forward that happens, which is completely normal. Dr. Barry Brazelton out of Boston has been one of the modern leaders in us understanding this idea that child development is a cycle that can backtrack and jump forward, and it is not inherently an issue. So that's why we really want to know where children are right now, as well as where they're going and where they've been. So as they have those points of regression, we can meet them where they're at and then help them jump forward. So in this lecture series, we're going to talk about a bunch of people that I like to call, quote, dead white men. There is one dead white woman in the mix, so it does get a little variable in that way. But these people are progressives. They kind of bucked the system at the time of their work and life. They were people who were revolutionaries, and they really believed that we can break down the barriers of inequality in society by having strong democratic learning environments. We can break down issues of race, class, gender, by engaging with children in a way that is meaningful. So you see here a list of the people we're going to talk about in this first lecture series, and the first person we're going to talk about is John Comenius. I want you to note this date. 1592 to 1670 were the dates of his life, so this was really a long time ago. He was the first person to have this brilliant idea that children's books should be illustrated, that the pictures would engage children more and help them understand the content of the book. He viewed learning as a progression of development, and that he was one of the first to say children develop in stages. And so many people who came after him piggybacked on that idea. He had progressive ideas about who should be educated and how, including, believe it or not, that girls should be educated as well as boys. He believed in the inherent goodness of children. Remember that 1592 to 1600 is a time of strong Christian times, and so much of Christian belief populated the educational world, and the Christian belief that people are born into sin and are inherently evil and have to be taught to be good was a really strong underpinning of education at the time. He did not believe in punishment in schools, and he believed that learning environments should be engaging for all children. There were 7 key practices in Comenius' schools. 1, children were not to be punished. 2, the teachers must be kind. Believe it or not, you had to tell teachers to be kind at that time. That instruction was based on children's desired experiences, what we would currently call emergent curriculum. Dancing, rhymes, singing, and music were a large part of the program. Remember, this is the early 1600s where children should sit down and be quiet and listen to adults. The 5th one, children's questions were to be answered in respectful and kind ways. And 6 and 7 are both about outdoor spaces, that children should be going outside not at set periods, but when they were losing engagement in the curriculum, and that their learning should be extended to outdoors, not just indoor spaces, and that all subjects could be taught both indoors and outdoors. Now we're going to talk about Johan Pestalozzi, and we jump about 100 years, a little bit more, to get to Mr. Pestalozzi. He really believed that we needed to look at our own systems if there are behavioral problems, that the environment could be the cause of behavioral problems, and that if the environment met the needs of children, we would not have those issues. He advocated for this idea that that education should be the heart, hand, and mind integrated together. And for people who are familiar with the Friends school philosophy or Quaker school philosophies, this is the heart of their philosophy, that the mind and the heart and the hand all come together to have interactive learning experiences that are compelling and engaging. And that teachers teach best and children learn best when they interact with children instead of lecture at children. We're going to jump ahead a number of years now to the late 1700s and the early 1800s, and we'll talk about Robert Owen here, where Mr. Owen, believed that punishment is never required and that it should be avoided as much as poison in children's food, which we would all agree should be always avoided. Children should be taught with kindness from teachers in tone, look, word, and action, and that all four of those aspects were really important. Friedrich Frbel, this name may be familiar to you. He is known as the father of kindergarten, and his idea of kindergarten is very different than what we use it for today. Kindergarten literally means children's garden in German. And it really emulates more of what has become our nursery school approach in the United States. And kindergarten was meant to be before traditional public schooling, age 3 to 6. So it really was preschool ages. And he really believed that the child is unfolding towards goodness in their life, but they're really vulnerable to negative experiences of others, both adults and other children, which I think we can all agree we see in experiences children have. So that it was really the adult who could help guide the child towards these positive, good ways of being in the world. He advocated for discipline more than punishment. So we talked about the difference between punishment, discipline, and guidance in an earlier segment. And so in this, he believed that that discipline, that leading children towards a more discipled way of being was the most important. He also created classroom, quote, gifts and occupations for children in the classrooms, things like plain wooden blocks or the gifts and yarn, and really open-ended materials that the children could engage with, and occupations being jobs within the classrooms that children could engage in to really feel ownership. Now we will jump to Maria Montessori. She is our one woman in the mix, and I'm sure many of you have heard of her. She was the first female doctor in Italy, and she was a pediatrician. She was not a trained teacher, obviously, by being a pediatrician, and she saw children in learning environments that weren't really set up for their inherent natures. She worked with a lot of children with disabilities and saw that they were really cast off and institutionalized or treated poorly. So she started bringing forth this idea, once again, of children developing in stages, and that there were these sensitive periods that children were ready for certain things in, as they developed certain ideas and concepts that they were ready for at sometimes more than others. She believed that children's learning was best when it was hands-on and sensorial, as well as involving practical life skills. So in Montessori classrooms, you see a lot of that today, where children have what they call works, and children do a lot of independent work that's very hands-on and designed to guide the child and be built on as children develop. And that also this idea of practical life comes in a lot, where children are doing things like baking and cleaning and taking care of the environment. She advocated for beautiful environments that could engage children. And she said she was known for saying teachers should, quote, observe much and teach little. That it was really the teacher was responsible for viewing what the children were doing and then basing curriculum off of that. I'm sorry about the overlay of the font there. Here we're talking about John Dewey, and he is often referred to as the father of American education. He considered that progressive education, he's considered the architect of progressive education in the U.S., and he was really dedicated to this idea that classrooms were the place to teach children to live in a democratic society. He believed that classrooms served as a microcosm for this larger society, and that societal issues could be worked on within the classroom in these safer, smaller spaces so children could be at their best as they grew up in this democratic society that we live in. He called classrooms busy workshops, and he believed that children should have hands-on life experiences, including problem solving together in a classroom. So when there were conflicts or issues in a classroom, they should always be used as teachable moments within the classroom environment so that everyone could learn from one another. So all of these theorists together, you can really see this cycle of behavior, that how the adult views the children then influences how they build their curriculum and structure their classroom, which then influences the child's behavior. So if adults believe that children are fully competent and capable of making good choices and decisions, they're then going to develop a classroom that allows children to make choices and decisions, and that can then children will rise to that expectation, and of course they'll make mistakes, but because the teacher is of the guidance tradition, they can use that as a teaching moment because of the way they view the child to come back and develop more curriculum. So this concludes part 1 of this week's lecture. Tune in when you're ready after you've taken a break. Tune in soon to part 2 and learn a little bit more of the foundations of the guidance tradition.